Hey y'all, hopefully, let me see to make sure you can see the area we're going to be working on here today. Let me see if I can lower this just a little bit. Just a little bit. I think that might be better. Okay, let me turn on the tablet so that I can get it on the live video so I can make sure I'm live on the right page. And that if you have any comments, I can see them. There we are. Volume's on mute. And there it is. We're going to be working today on the vanity, the stinky vanity. I put another, somewhere around here is a bottle of orange oil. This is the one I used. Sweet Orange by Acacia. It's a very good brand. I've been using this brand for probably 15 years. I use some Now Foods brand as well. But anyways, there's Sweet Orange, probably for the 4th time today in the drawers, and it's beginning to smell a little bit like sweet orange instead of like grandpa's snuff. And I also, if you'll remember, we used the stencil to do a raised stencil to hide some of the area where we had tried to repair the veneer and it had a humped up ugly piece, and then we put a little bit on the drawers to match that. And I have mixed up some milk paint again. This is still the wild salmon from Junk Monkey, and I used what is this? A 1/4 cup. So I put a 1/4 cup of the milk paint powder, which looks like this. Comes in a powder. And wild salmon. I put that in the same bowl I used the other day, because you can see around here the top, that's dried paint. I ruined the bowl, but that's okay. I'll just use it for painting forever. So you can see sort of the consistency of that. It's been a little over 10 minutes, probably close to 15 minutes. And it's still a little, it's thinner than a chalky paint would be, and it looks like there's a little bit of lumps in there, but I've been using this thing that Candy got me from Junk Monkey to stir it with for a little while. But I wanted to show you the completion of the, see if I can move you a little closer for this part. Morning, Liz. The completion of the raised stencil. I sanded over that just a tad, and it comes off really easy with the sand pad this morning. This was probably a 120. I'm gonna, can you see? Liz, can you see good down here whenever I point right here? Because this is the drawer stencil, and I didn't sand this one because I wanted to sand it on here live and show you that we're just lightly going to go over it. And I just want to make sure that that y'all can see it before I start sanding it. See if I can scoot it a little more that way. Awesome. Okay, so this is, you know, lumpy and bumpy, and I worried how bad that was going to be. And one other thing I did was there was a gap in between here underneath this piece of molding and the table part, and I tried to figure what I was going to fill that with. So I just stuck some of that mud on my finger and filled up the hole, and I used my putty knife while I had it out the other day to kind of make sure it was crammed up in there real good. And then I scraped off in front of it, and then this morning I just sanded a little over it, and we're not going to worry about it because we're going to paint over it. Push it back like farther away. There we go. I think you can see it. But anyways, it's just lightly. See where it like went over a little bit there, and see how it's just falling off like snow. I mean, it's just like chalk coming off of a chalkboard there. And all I'm just doing is making it sort of evenly bumpy. Not, thank you, Liz. Not, you know, having a big chunk up here and a little chunk down there. But I've already done this to the other drawer. I've done it to this part here and to the part on top. And then all I did was take another brush and dust it off to get that excess mud dust off of there before we painted. And I've decided about the next part. So I want to tell y'all that part, and I'll do this part on another live. But I've decided what to do here. We're going to put another coat of the Junk Monkey milk paint on here. They're milkshake paint in the wild salmon. But this time I didn't mix the extra, thanks Joan. This time I didn't mix the extra bond in with it to make it not kink and crackle. This time I kind of want it to kink and crackle a little bit because I decided to use the Junk Monkey brown glaze over it to get in some of the details to make it look more distressed. But I also decided that in between, like after we paint this morning and then let that dry, I'm going to put a coat of banana peel, which is Junk Monkey's like matte top coat, because I'm afraid when I start putting the glaze on that it's going to muddy this up and you're not going to be able to appreciate the wild salmon as much. So I'm going to put a good layer of top coat on it, and then just kind of like we would before we use a dark wax, and then I'll come back on another live and we'll use the Junk Monkey glaze on there. And this is the same chip brush. You can see a little bit of the wild salmon still up in there. That, thank you, Liz, that we used last time. So, let's see. Just want to make sure you can see good. We're probably just going to go over, like on the live video, go over doing the top part and this part to see how that covers and not, you know, keep y'all here the whole time. But, get a sip of tea. I decided to, because I talk so dang much when I'm on here anyways, and it's getting closer to Valentine's Day, that we should just talk about our love stories. So I decided I would share that we don't do much that's not comical around here. So I decided I would share my engagement story with y'all today. Eric is from West Virginia. I'm from here in Louisiana. Hey, Tanya. And Tanya is married to Eric's stepbrother. How about that? Another West Virginian visiting us. But anyways, Eric came here to Louisiana, to Fort Polk, Louisiana, in the Army in 1987, I think. There we go. Now that we're going to do the top. And he was best friends with my dad because my dad owned a bar. And when Eric got to Fort Polk, as you know, an 18-year-old right out of high school, he came here for after basic training, which I think was in Fort Benning, Georgia. And then he was stationed at Fort Polk, which is not where everybody wants to be stationed, I believe, but it's home for me and now home for Eric. And anyway, he said he landed here on Fort Polk and called a cab and said, take me to a country bar. Take me where there's just real, regular people and, you know, where they'll be accepting of me and I'll have, you know, like a place to call home. So this cab driver, whoever he was, brought him to the Fanny Hill Club, which was my daddy's old bar. And he never left. He was there for, they became best buddies. My dad was a big, well, drinker for one, but he was a big, like cookout guy. And there was, my parents divorced when I was real young, so I wasn't raised that way. But anyways, he had cookouts and friends over, and it was like Cheers bar, you know. When you walked in the door, it would be, Eric, hey, buddy. You know, so whoever the guy was, I believe everything happens for a reason, and it was some kind of fate. Brought Eric to the Fanny Hill Club, and they became big buddies. And, you know, I saw him there over the years. Let's see, he got here, I think, in 87, and we didn't start dating until 91. He dated somebody else, you know, during that time, actually, a distant relative of mine. But, they were great buddies. They were watching football together every weekend, having cookouts every weekend, and we all entered chili cook-offs together. In Louisiana, food's a big thing. You know, everybody there's a festival for everything, a cook-off every weekend. There's, every time anybody needs anything, there's people have like fundraisers. And fundraisers are always, we gonna cook a big bunch of stuff and y'all come donate some money to us and we're gonna give it to the people in need. So we did all kinds of that stuff over the years. And then eventually, somehow or another, we both went to a party at our friend Jerry and Yo-Yo's house. This was our first date. And I think everybody was shocked over that. And my daddy told Eric he wasn't good enough for me. He didn't dress well enough for me. Not that he wasn't good enough, that he didn't dress well enough, because I didn't dress like this back then. And had, you know, a office job and all that kind of brouhaha. But anyway, so Eric is a funny guy. And I like funny. But I had, you know, never noticed him as that way before that. And we started dating. I just painted right over that. If y'all saw that, I'm just painted right over it. And I'm hoping when we glaze, it's going to go in all those crevices and make that stick out. But so, my daddy did not approve. And I believe that he did not approve, not because of anything other than he was afraid of losing his best buddy. You know, if me and Eric were to, I don't know where in the heck I am there. Here I am. If Eric and I were ever to, you know, get in a bad fight and break up, he didn't want to lose his buddy, and I don't blame him for that, for goodness sakes, you know. They were good friends. But anyway, so we dated, and we dated, and we dated for 15 years to begin with. And I never wanted to get married again until my kids were grown, because I had been married before, and I had kids in school. And it's not easy. And I didn't want my relationship with Eric to suffer over my kid raising. And I didn't want my kid relationship suffering over Eric. And just kind of thought it was the best thing. So we just kept going along through life. And didn't go to West Virginia and meet his family for years and years. Well, one time we were about 15 years in, and we got to West Virginia and went and visited Eric's daddy. I loved him. He used to call me every Sunday. He called me Sunshine. And I looked forward to being woke up every Sunday morning with him saying, "Morning, Sunshine." But anyways, me and his dad got along great. And we were driving down the road, music blaring. That's really what aggravates me a lot now about Eric, because he still does it. You don't get to talk when you're going down the road because he has the radio blaring. So we're driving down the road in West Virginia with the radio blaring, and he turns down the radio, or turns it off completely down for a second. He looks at me and he says, "We can get married if you want to." And before I could say anything, he turned the radio back up. So I didn't say nothing. And thought, honestly, I'm going to be honest with you here, I thought, well, that ain't good enough. We've been together 15 years, and you're going to turn down the radio and say we can get married if you want to, and then turn it back up? Heck with that. So I never said nothing. He never said nothing either. And it was like another whole year, and we went back to West Virginia to visit again. And I don't know if his daddy was saying something to him or exactly what happened there, but he said, "You want to go to the mall and go to the jewelry store?" And I thought, well, I hope the heck he does better at the jewelry store than he did at the proposing. But I didn't say nothing. I kind of looked at him and probably said, "We can go to the mall if you want to. I need a new purse." You know, something about like that. Now, this is year 16 of dating. And I'm just going right over this mud here, and there's no gap showing in there. So, and this mud's going to stay filling that gap. It's not like if I had used a silicone, it would pull away later or something like that. The mud should stay in that hole. But anyway, so we went to the mall, and I got a new purse, and we went by Zales. And gosh, you got to know my husband. He is not near the cheapskate that he used to be, but Lord have mercy, that man was, he always looking for a bargain. So we walk in Zales, and he says, "Y'all got anything on sale?" I'm like, oh my gosh, he's killing me. He's killing me. And all I can do is laugh at him. So they took him seriously, which he wasn't being serious, but I don't guess. He may have been being serious for all I know. But so they showed us whatever it was they wanted to show us, and I didn't say very much because I get aggravated, and I figure instead of getting aggravated, I may as well just stand there and see how everything was going to unfold. So I'm trying to get in these gaps here. So turns out the guy asks, what's your budget? And Eric looks at me and says, what's my budget? And I said, well, your budget's supposed to be 2 months' salary. But at the time, Eric was working overseas and he was making like, I don't know, $10,000 a month or something like that. So, you know, that my joke was back on him. Obviously, we're not the type to spend that kind of money on anything. But, so the jeweler by then was laughing at us too. And I just walked around and kept my mouth shut and looked to find what I wanted, because if we was going to spend money, I at least wanted to like it. And I can't even show it to you because I don't have it on while I'm painting. But anyway, so I was pretty impressed with the ring he picked out, and it actually was on sale, or he asked him for a deal or something. He actually got a good deal on it, and it's beautiful, and I love it, and it's perfect, and that's been many years ago. So we went straight from there over to his mama's house on the porch so he could show off that he bought me a ring. And he never had still yet said, hey, will you marry me down on one knee, and none of that kind of stuff. But, you know, he is who he is, and I love him for who he is, so maybe on our 50th he'll do that. Anyways, we were then considered engaged, and I'm not going to tell the whole wedding story on this video because I'm not going to stay on here that much longer. But we, of course, we have a wedding story too. If you know us, that everything always has a story. Let's see if I can lower this a little bit. I want to go over at least one of these drawers in front of y'all. But yeah, we have a wedding story too. So I had never wanted to, get married until my kids were grown. And at year, I don't know how many, because Andrew was 2 years old when Eric and I started dating, and he was born in 1987. He must have been 4. Eric and I started dating in 91. So, and Andrew is, what is that? He'll be 32 this year in November. Wow, that's amazing. But there's always a rest of the story. So that was the story of turn the radio down, say, we can get married if you want to, and then turn the radio back up. Don't even wait for an answer. Men. This is, and I know that because of the paint going on here that y'all aren't going to be able to see this as clearly once the paint goes on here. But all the texture of that raised stencil is still on here. And once we put the brown glaze on there, you'll be able to see that more. And I have decided as well that I'm not 100% sure on the color, but I'm thinking I'm going to paint the insides and the sides of the drawers like a candy bar brown. And then remember, I'm going to come back and line the drawers with this paper. But I think, because of it having the issues with, with the smells and everything, that it's going to be smart for me to go in there and cover them with a coat of paint. So this is milk paint again, only my second time to ever use it. Good morning, And good morning, Decoupage Designs USA. And my husband was a huge Cleveland Browns fan. His entire life. We fly, or used to fly, in and out of, oh my goodness, where is it at? Someplace there in Ohio. My mind is blank. But anyways, we flew in and out of Ohio for years and years. Now when we fly in, we usually fly in and out of Pittsburgh. But the closest to his hometown, which is Parkersburg, West Virginia, is, I can't remember the name of the town, there in Ohio. And his mother worked in Marietta, Ohio, at like a medical equipment manufacturing company. Yes, this is, yes, I'm painting with Junk Monkey milk paint in Wild Salmon. This is only my second time to ever use milk paint. The first time I was afraid, because I don't usually do things very distressed, I added their Extra Bond to it and made it to where it wouldn't do all the crackling and stuff like milk paint usually does. And this coat, I've decided I wanted a little bit of that on there because when we go back with the glaze, I would like it to have more crevices to go into. And that's honestly about it for this part today. The milk paint, if you've not used it before, this is still just my second time using it, or my first time using it without the Extra Bond. It doesn't have the same like fluid texture and thickness of like the chalky style paints that I usually paint with. It feels a little bit different, but this coat is going on. I don't know whether it's because it's the second coat or whether it's because I don't have the Extra Bond in there to kind of thicken it up, but it's going on a lot more smoothly as far as brush feel than the first coat did. Oh, cool. What part of Louisiana? Yeah, I'm a chalky style painter too, Angie. This is very, very new to me. And if you have any questions about how it's feeling or anything, ask me and I'll answer them. It feels like it has a little bit of drag. Lake Charles. I was born in Lake Charles. That's like, I work in DeRidder. My artisan market's in DeRidder, and coffee shop and health food store. And I live in Pickering. So we're about 45 miles north of Lake Charles. My family was from Lake Charles. That's a small world. Small world. But anyways, the paint feels like it has a little bit of drag, to where if it was chalky paint, I would be adding a little bit of water. I would be misting it or dipping my brush in water. And I'm afraid to, because I don't have enough experience to know whether it would be okay for me to wet this down some more or not. Because, you know, you do mix it with the water 50-50. And I just don't know, because I don't have the experience, but I'm not. I'm just going with it as it's with the mixture that it has, until I can, have more experience with it another time. But it does have that beginning of the drag that chalk paint can have when you need to moisten it. And I'm just going with it and painting with it like that anyway. Ponchatoula, how about that? And Miami, Florida. We went down to Miami, either the West Virginia Mountaineers or LSU, probably the Mountaineers, played in, is it the Orange Bowl that's in Miami? Whichever of the bowl games that's in Miami. We played there a couple of years ago, and we flew down and watched that football game and had a good time. It wasn't, I believe we played Syracuse there. We tore them up, whoever it was, like 60-7 or something terrible like that. that we should have stopped and had some pride for the other team and just kept going because they had been so ugly to us ahead of time. But anyway, I got to go, you know, stick my feet in the sand at Miami Beach, and Shirley didn't get in the water because it was winter, probably New Year's Day or somewhere close to it around there. But I did get to see a little bit. We didn't stay but just for like 2 days. But it was beautiful down there. I'd love to go back and bring my grandkids and really enjoy the area. We went to some Cuban sandwich place that was recommended on TripAdvisor and had the best Cuban sandwich that we've ever had in our lives. I remember doing that down there. And the stadium was gorgeous. Oh my goodness. It was beautiful. Clean. Nice. Okay. It looks so wet and shiny. Yeah. Oh, did I? No, yeah, that's the hole for the stencil. When I was putting the mud on there to put the stencil in, I accidentally got some mud in the hole. But I had this out earlier because I opened this drawer. See, it goes all the way through. It's just still showing a little bit. But to me, it looks like there's way too much paint right here. And I want to come back and pull it off. But that's just the way this milk paint is looking. It doesn't take a long time to dry. But it looks like it's puddled when it's not. And that's the weird part of it, is it looks like it's puddled when it's not. Excuse me. So I keep wanting to go back and drag over it so that it doesn't run, when in reality it's just catching the light there, I guess, from the amount of water that's in it. But there are a few places where I missed that there. I'm gonna continue on. I'm gonna let y'all go. I'm gonna get the rest of the inside here, get the 2 sides. We're not doing the back except for the little edge there on the back. And saying and a lot today. Pull this up if I can, because that's also my light that I'm working with. You know what? I don't know if it's self-leveling. I wondered about that too. It's not leaving, it's hot in here, y'all. It's not leaving brush strokes. You know how if you were having some drag with your chalky paint and pulling it across there, it would leave the raised brush strokes, or at least with it, like the DIY paint it would. With Dixie Belle it doesn't so much, but with the chalky based or the clay based paints, it will be raised. This is not raised at all, so it must be self-leveling, because it's not leaving ridges from using this cheap chip brush, and you would think that it might would. But it does have a little bit of a bubbly texture in a couple of places. It's, like I said, it's different. I'm not used to it, but you know, the first few times that you use something, you're not going to be used to it. And I'm going to continue to give it a chance and have it sort of in my repertoire of things that, you know, to do to a piece whenever I'm trying to think of what to do. And the reason that with this second coat that I didn't add the extra bond was, from what I understand, what the milk paint does, or at least what this milk paint does, they call it Milkshake from Junk Monkey. And I've watched Sonia Miller on there, that's the owner of that company, do a ton of videos. And she is a shabby painter and wants things to be, you know, distressed and peeled back more than I do. So I only have the experience of watching her. So she appreciates the fact that you have no idea what this paint is going to do. You don't know where it's going to peel at. You don't know where it's going to chip at. You don't know what kind of texture or how much texture. This thing could be like a alligator hide on top with all kinds of crackle, or it could have none. And from what I understand, if you want it to crackle more, you would put something underneath it which gives it a lot of gloss. And where it needs something to bite into and to adhere to. And if it doesn't have that, then that's going to crackle and peel more. And adding the extra bond to this the first time I did it to prevent having any of that, because I didn't want that, I believe gave it enough of a gloss finish that's going to cause this layer, which doesn't have that in it, to have a little more crackle and peel, which I wanted, because I want the a little bit of that there. And I'm going to dust over that with a sander once I see what happens. You got to give it a few hours to completely dry for it to reveal itself of the surprise of what it's done with your piece. But I wanted to have a few more crackles and crevices here and there for the brown glaze to go into once I decided to use that. So my plan is, once this is dry, I'm going to give it a couple of hours. I'm going to look for any areas that have that crackling appearance, and I'm going to use that same like 220 grit sander and just sort of dust off any loose pieces. Then I'm going to put a matte based top coat on, so that whenever I do use the glaze, it doesn't sink down in here. You know what I mean? How the same way if we were using dark wax, you would put that clear wax coat first so that the dark didn't seep down into the paint, because I don't want this whole thing to be a brown tinged salmon. I want it to mostly be salmon and have the aging of the brown tinges in certain areas. So I'm going to put a top coat to make that easier, and then use, you know, my application method and the amount that I apply on of the glaze and everything to be where the glaze and the darker colors are heaviest at. So that's going to be the next step. And whenever I get to that, if y'all are, I put a new alerts page, post on the page a couple of days ago. So if you're not getting alerts and you want to get alerts whenever I do a live that's a tutorial like this, like I do spontaneous lives all the time, and I don't go through mini chat, which is like the bot that automatically tells you when there's going to be one. I don't go through that a lot, but whenever I'm doing something where we're kind of all working together and learning something new, I always give, you know, an advance notice when we're going to come on. And it's like a picture of a Facebook Live or something like that, and it was just within the last couple of days that I did that. If you find that post, I believe it's the word yes that you would put under there, then it will send you something by messenger that says, hey, are you wanting to receive these notifications? And you just reply to it yes or whatever you want to once it gets in your messenger. Then I will send out, you know, the notifications whenever I'm doing these tutorial style lives, for, you know, you to get a notification if you're wanting to see the next part. If not, they're always here for the replay. But I love it whenever y'all are here to talk to me. That's a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm very excited about that, Angie, and I'm nervous about it. I'm kind of a little bit of a control freak, so I'm proud of myself today that I'm giving up a little bit of control to this paint to let it do its own thing. But this piece has a whole lot of doing its own thing going on already, so I figured why the heck not? This is the perfect piece to experiment with the milk paint on and see what it's going to do. I was just too nervous to do it the first time. So hopefully with this coat, there'll be a few areas here and there, and you know, nothing too bad, and then we can move forward with the glaze and end up, I know, you know, you're wanting the light to hit in exactly the right spots, and the dark areas to be exactly where you want them, the exact thickness that you want them. You know, a lot of people don't realize how whenever you're doing a piece like this, and when it's done, they're like, oh, that's pretty, you did a good job. And you're thinking, I poured my heart and soul into that piece. Anyway, I've enjoyed talking to y'all, and I hope you enjoyed my engagement story with my romantic, not husband. Love him, my romantic, no. Wouldn't trade him for anything, because he is a hard worker and he takes good care of us. So I believe that's more important than romantic, at least in my life it is. He takes great pride in being a good provider, and that's important to somebody who was married before, to somebody who you couldn't kick out the door and make work if you needed to. But anyway, so I'm excited about this and seeing what it's going to do, and I'm going to share that. Awesome. I'm glad I shared it. Next time I come in, I'm going to tell you the wedding story, because it, you know, if you knew us, this is typical Eric and Terry. But you know, I guess I'm thinking about Valentine's Day, so we'll move forward on that. And I'll see y'all in a little while. Bye.